Hello everyone, welcome back to XSP Green Monster channel. My name is Riley, and this channel is all about my 1997 Suburban and all the things I do car audio on it, as well as just general maintenance and mechanic style stuff on it. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoy, and please leave a comment down below of a video you guys would like to see or of any suggestions you have. So today I'm going to be going over the top 5 most asked questions. Kind of most asked. Some of these I see a lot. Well, 3 of them I see a lot. 3 of them I see kind of all the time on the car audio pages, car audio forums, just kind of asked all the time. And 2 of them I just kind of searched through some of the pages I'm a part of, and I just picked 2 that I found that I thought were kind of interesting. So I'm just gonna get right into it, and then we can start talking. Had to move the camera a little bit closer because I thought that was a little bit far away. But so first one I'm gonna go over that I see a lot. So I'm gonna go over the 3 questions I just see a lot, kind of all the time. And the first one I see asked all the time is, what's the best ... What's the best amplifier? What's the best sub? What's the best speaker? What's the best enclosure? And there's not really a hard answer to this. Even if you ask like what's the best between 2 different subwoofers, it's really comes down to what you're interested in, what you can afford, and what works best with your build and with the power that you have and with the electrical setup that you have. So my best answer to what's the best of anything is just, it's whatever works. It's whatever's the best for you. Whatever's the best money-wise for you, whatever's the best space-wise for you, because you don't want to get a subwoofer that's too big for the box you're using, you don't want to get a subwoofer that's too small for the box you're using. You want to get a subwoofer that's well matched to the box you're using as well as the amplifier that you're going to be using. So the answer to what's the best ... is just whatever works best for you, and that's kind of all there is to that question. Everyone's going to have different opinions. Everyone's going to have certain companies that they prefer to go with. I prefer to go with DC audio for subwoofers. I prefer to go with quite a few different things. I prefer to go with Sky High Car Audio for wire. I prefer to go with Singer alternators, and if I see those questions, I usually recommend those companies because I've had good luck with those companies. So asking that on any forum or something like that really is just going to get you an answer that's everyone else's opinion on what their best favorite companies are. It's not really going to get you a what's the best, because the best is really an opinion. Some people are SQ, some people are sound quality, some people are low hertz. It just kind of comes down to whatever that person likes and whatever you like. So really you want to do your research, and then if you're deciding between 2, just ask other people what their experiences with those are and see what other people have liked about them, what they haven't liked about them, because I find that whenever there's one that's like what's the best, first of all, there's always a lot of people that get on there and they bash because it's a question that's hard to answer and people aren't very nice about it sometimes. And there's a bunch of people that just say like, oh, this is the best because I run it. So I feel like if you ask what's your opinions on this, then you're going to get a lot better answers than if you ask what's the best. So if you are interested in that, I would suggest asking what is your opinion, asking what everyone else's opinion is on a subwoofer or an amplifier or a speaker instead of asking what's the best. Second one I want to go into is sealed or ported box. I see this one a lot as well, people asking whether you should go with sealed or ported. So I think there's a big myth around sealed boxes, that sealed boxes the sub can't play as responsively. I've heard that a lot, that the subs don't play as responsively as a sealed box. Also, the whole like 8-inch subwoofers can't play as responsibly or play more responsively than 18-inch subwoofers. It's, I mean, to an extent, but not an audible extent by any means. But I'm gonna stick with sealed or ported. So I'm gonna explain too. So obviously sealed box is a completely sealed box. You wanna make sure it's a completely sealed box. If you do build a sealed box, you want to have silicone in every corner, which you wanna do with ported as well. It's kind of just a good practice, is to have silicone in every corner of the box or some type of sealant that's gonna keep the air from seeping out of any cracks. But a sealed box is gonna have generally a much lower response and a much flatter response. So a sealed box, you're gonna get a good response for a wide variety of ranges. and flat meaning that you're not going to have big drop-offs and how loud it is at different frequencies. Like my box plays pretty loud at like 38, but it doesn't play as loud at like 60, whereas a sealed box could play almost the same response from like 30 hertz up to 60 hertz, depending on the box and depending on how you build it. But that's kind of the general idea with them, is that they play very well. You can push more power to the subwoofer because it's kind of fighting itself with the pressure inside the box. So usually a sealed box, the subs can take a little bit more power. There's a few advantages to it. They're a lot smaller as well. Sealed boxes are generally like half to a third of the volume of the recommended ported box. So you can fit a lot more in a smaller area. Now, ported boxes, obviously you have a port, it requires a little bit more tuning, it requires having a little bit more knowledge about building boxes. Sealed boxes, you kind of just build whatever the company recommends, and it's gonna play pretty well. Ported boxes, sometimes you build what the company recommends. It depends on power, it depends on your electrical system. Ported boxes are a little bit more complicated, and you run into some other issues like port velocity, port area, port depth, stuff like that. 45 in corners, making sure air is flowing well. Chuffing, which is just the sound that air makes if the port isn't designed correctly. So there's a couple things to think about. Sealed or ported box, this comes down to your opinion. If you want something that's small, you don't have a lot of space, generally a sealed box is a good way to go. If you want something that's louder, ported boxes are generally louder if they're built properly. A badly ported box will not be louder than a well-built sealed box, I would say, in my opinion. So if you're just starting to build boxes, I would recommend maybe building a sealed box for your sub and seeing how you like it. Let you play with building boxes a little bit, let you make sure you get your cuts right. Just kind of go through it a little bit. So if you're new building boxes, I'd recommend just building a sealed box for your sub, just to kind of test it out, see what you like. You can also learn the FS of your cabin using a sealed box, because it will play whatever the highest FS of your cabin airspace is. So a sealed box can be an extremely good testing instrument as well. So on the sealed box or ported box question, again, it comes down to your opinion, it comes down to what you want, it comes down to the space that you have, it comes down to what kind of subwoofers you want. Some subwoofers do better in ported boxes, some do better in sealed boxes. So that's kind of what it comes down to. And then there's the band pass side of that, which is usually a ported box into a ported box, or a sealed box that's where the other side of the sub is in a ported box. I'm not gonna get in band passes because I'm not very knowledgeable on band passes and I don't want to give any misinformation on them. But band passes are generally louder than both, but those require a lot more research, and they're usually much, much, much larger boxes. So the third most asked question that I see is, how do you hair trick? And I actually see this a lot, that people just want to do hair tricks because they see a bunch of other people doing it. And some people do on really low power and very little amount of subs, but a lot of people that I see doing hair tricks, it's a wall build or it's a high power, lots of subwoofers build. To really get the crazy hair tricks, usually you need a wall with a bunch of subwoofers and a bunch of power. Not necessarily a bunch of power, you can do it on just a lot of subwoofers, but you need cone area and you need port velocity. Port velocity is kind of the big part of that, because that means velocity through the window, which is obviously what causes the hair to move. So hair tricking and doing stuff like that really comes down to, you kind of have to build yourself up to it. I would say that very few people, their first box that they build or that they get does hair tricks. And if you want to do hair tricks, you have to understand that you're kind of getting into like the bigger leagues when you get into hair tricks. And by that, I mean that you're getting into electrical upgrades, you're getting into alternators, extra batteries, tons of wire, tons of runs of wire, sometimes a bigger amplifier, generally like a 3K or above amplifier, and generally quite a few subs, which means a very large box. I know that, there might be some people coming on here, I know that there are some people doing it on 212s out of a trunk that can do hair tricks. I understand that, but I'm talking about like the really, really like crazy like Jeep and bass style hair tricks, or like Galen Winniset. The cars that, you can make, they're not just making hair move, they're really like shaking things apart, and the more violent hair tricks is what I'm talking about. You can usually get hair to move, I'd say around like a 146 to a 150. Generally gets hair moving a little bit, and then like the 155 and above is usually where you're getting enough port velocity that it can like really blow some hair around. So in the response to the how do you hair trick question that I see quite a few times. It really comes down to knowledge of what you're running and knowledge of what you need to run. And generally people don't build a build to hair trick necessarily, but they just kind of build to what they want, and then if it turns out that it works out, then sometimes it's hair tricks, but usually it doesn't. It's kind of a hard question to answer because there's not a straight answer for it. I picked a lot of these questions because I feel like there's not a straight answer to these questions, and they're questions that I see a lot when there's not like a set answer to any of them. It's your opinion, it's what you want. It comes down to the knowledge that you have, the power you have, the money you have, the capabilities you have. Some cars, there's just not enough space to do some of these things. There's not enough, the engines don't have triple alt brackets or dual alt brackets. You can't get alternators big enough to run big sound on some of these, although you can make it work, but it kind of comes down to like what you want to do. Yeah, that one's a little bit harder to answer. I actually just thought of another one that we put in here, and that's AGM or lithium. I've been seeing this more and more as lithium has been getting bigger in the car audio world, and the whole lithium can't demo thing is really, to an extent, a myth. Really, it's a myth. The whole like a lithium battery can't demo. Lithium batteries can demo just fine. They recharge and they discharge very quickly. And yes, they discharge very quickly, but they also recharge very quickly, which is what allows it to demo. They are very good for burps because of their quick discharge, but they can also recharge rapidly, which allows it to do demos, because most songs are not a straight bass note. Some are, but some have tiny, tiny breaks, and that can give the lithiums enough to recharge themselves. Lithiums take extremely low charging, so if you have one of those vehicles that can only take like a 240 amp alternator, you don't have space for duals, lithium may be a really good option for you, because lithiums can generally only handle 200 to 400 amps of charging depending on how big the lithium is. And overcharging lithium is a really big deal, so you never want to overcharge lithium batteries. So I'd say lithium batteries are kind of like, almost like, I want to say the Korean boards, but that's not quite true. But they're kind of like something that like takes more to take care of. They're a little bit finickier with voltage. You have to be watching the individual cells, but when they're done right, they're extremely rewarding. Whereas AGMs, you can kind of slap them in, you can throw as much charging on them as you want, they're gonna put out, but they're never gonna have the response or the discharge or the recharge that lithium can have. So in the lithium versus AGM, it comes down to, again, your opinion, your preference, what you want to do. In my case, I have a massive Suburban. I'd like to save space. I might put lithium in there at some point, but I'm gonna run lithium with AGM. If I do that, I don't want to just go straight lithium. Lithium's obviously a lot lighter. It's a lot more expensive though. So it comes down to your budget, it comes down to what you can do. But if you have a vehicle that can't support a big alternator with tons and tons of charging, I look into lithium, because that might be extremely helpful, and you're still gonna get the advantages of having like a large 8 battery bank in your vehicle. So the next one that I am going to answer, these last 2 questions are kind of more questions that I just picked off of a site that I thought were interesting. So, do subs play a role in sound quality? Now I thought this one was really interesting because I don't actually see this question that much, but I feel like it's kind of in the back of everyone's mind, like asking like how much does the subwoofer itself, not the box, not the enclosure, but the subwoofer itself actually play in sound quality? And I would argue, and this is completely my opinion, I haven't dealt much with sound quality, I haven't messed with it a lot, but I would argue that the subwoofer does not play a huge role in sound quality. I do not think that the subwoofer itself, at least in sound quality, in SPL and how loud you can get, I think the subwoofer plays a small role, but not as much as the box. The box is always more important than the subwoofer that goes in it. A good box can make a bad sub sound really good, whereas a bad box can make a good sub sound really bad. So I would always argue that the box is the most important role in sound quality and not the sub. The next one I see a lot is how do I repair ... How do I repair my amplifier? How do I repair my speaker? How do I repair my subwoofer? Subwoofers, the higher end subwoofers, can generally be reconed and contact. I would always go through, there's a couple different people. There's Dave Lieb, You've got JMF Customs. You have, oh, what's the other one? There's a couple different guys on Facebook. There's also PSI Car Audio. I really like going through PSI Car Audio. They do a good job. DC Audio sells recones for all their subwoofers. Amp, the best place I've heard is Amp Medics for amp repair. The manufacturer can sometimes repair your amplifier, but I found that the manufacturer generally sends it to Amp Medics. So you can find them on Facebook, I believe, Amp Medics. I'm not sure. I know they have a website, but I don't know the name of it. So to repair things, I would just kind of do your research. There's always a couple different options, like PSI, Pink Star Industries offers recones for all type. They'll build custom recones for subwoofers, so you don't have to have a PSI subwoofer to get a recone for it. My Rockford Fosgate T2s had PSI recones in them, love them. They can upgrade power handling sometimes, they can upgrade soft parts, carbon fiber cones, stuff like that. So yeah, how do you repair a blank kind of goes down to what do you have and what do you want to do with it. If you want to upgrade power handling, stuff like that, I would look at someone like Dave Lieb or JMF Customs, because they can do custom recones that can increase power handling, increase the capability to play lows, decrease the weight of the soft parts, which increases your FS response to the subwoofer. If you're looking to just get the exact same recone you had in it, I would go through the manufacturer. That's generally the best way to do it, is just go through a manufacturer. If they offer recones, not all manufacturers offer recones. Rockford Fosgate doesn't offer recones from I don't think they offer them for the Prime series or the Punch series. They may offer them for a Punch series, I'm not sure, but I know they don't offer them for a Prime series. Generally the stamp basket subwoofers are the ones that don't have recones, in general. Some of them do, most of them I've seen do not. And stamp being stamped out with a sheet of steel or a sheet of aluminum or whatever, but the machine baskets like DC subwoofers, Sundown subwoofers, those might be forged and then machined. Not sure, but any type of machining on a basket generally makes it so it's reconable. I'm not sure why they do that, generally because I think that's because usually the machined ones have a lip for the spiders, whereas the stamped ones don't have a big lip for the spiders, or it's not an easily cleanable lip. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're buying a subwoofer. It is usually worth it to go with a slightly more expensive subwoofer that has a recone, because then you don't have to buy a whole new subwoofer to destroy it. You just have to buy new soft parts. Just like with my level 518, I don't have to buy a whole new $1,000 subwoofer. I just have to buy a recone for it, which is more like $200. Keep that in mind when you're buying subwoofers. I hope that this video helped anyone. This is kind of more for people who are getting into car audio. Maybe some people who have been in car audio for a while but just haven't heard of some of these things, although I believe most people who've been in car audio for a while would have, but there's always a chance you haven't. I know I'm still learning a ton of new things, and I'm by no means an expert on car audio. I have some experience in it, but not nearly as much as a lot of people that I know. So I'm by no means an expert, and all of this is my opinion. But this is just kind of what I've learned, and this is kind of for everyone if you're interested into some of these questions that are asked. Yeah, so I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one.